This is Johnny Dosco. Stay tuned for another Scoresheet podcast. Holy Kadelka!
Hello and welcome to another Scoresheet podcast. Today I'm happy to say we have a guest from Baseball Prospectus, Rob McQuown. Rob, how are you today?
Doing well, Jeff. Good afternoon.
Good. It's good to talk to you. You've played Scoresheet for years. We've traded 1,000 emails. I think this is the first time we've talked on a podcast before.
Yeah, definitely. And wanted to roll out some new products we have here and glad to talk about them.
Yeah, that was why I wanted to get you on this week. Baseball Prospectus, it's baseballprospectus.com, has been around for a number of years. They write a great annual baseball book. They also have all sorts of statistics and a ton of authors on their site that write about all things baseball, both fantasy and real. But recently, Baseball Prospectus has come up with some Scoresheet specific programs, draft aids, team tracker, and that's what we're mainly going to talk about. So do you want to describe those, Rob?
Certainly. The one we've had for years is Team Tracker, and people who have been to the BP site are familiar with it. You can list all the players on your team, or you can enter a competitor's team, and you can use it and import directly from a Scoresheet league if you want, so you can get someone else's roster right there and create a new Team Tracker team and have as many teams as you want. It gives you totals for the previous season, the current season once it gets started, or the PECOTA projections for the upcoming season. And then just this past week, we rolled out the Scoresheet Draft Aid, which features some new statistics in addition to the Scoresheet simulation value, or SSSim as we refer to it in short. There are some things like TAV prime, which is our true average, except it's adjusted for Scoresheet values. It's not park adjusted, whereas if you go to the rest of the BP site, you'll find true average and it's park adjusted. So a 260 player in Colorado will put up higher base stats than a 260 TAV player in, say, Petco.
The neat thing about what you guys do is it's not all rotisserie based. There's a lot of, there's an SSSim, you call it, which stands for Scoresheet Simulation Value. So if you're wondering what your player is going to be worth in Scoresheet, or more importantly, maybe somebody that you're thinking of drafting, you don't just get some rotisserie value that overinflates values of steals or runs scored. Instead, you get the actual value, projected value of that player in the Scoresheet game.
Oh, definitely, Jeff. And everything goes into this SSSim value. I mean, it's not only the batting stats, but the fielding stats, the fielding range based on the Scoresheet range numbers, the positional scarcity, like a shortstop who bats like Troy Tulowitzki would have a lot more value than if Tulowitzki played the outfield, for example.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And like you said, you've got this draft aid where it reads in the rosters real time for your league and tells you who the next 10 best hitters are and 10 best pitchers are as measured by Scoresheet value. And then that team tracker, most people think of team trackers as during the season you use them to see what your guy did in real life yesterday or last week. But during the preseason here, it's got last year's stats, plus it also has your guys' projections for 2012. So you can kind of quickly look at your team and go, gee, my third basemen are really weak. I need to draft another, or whatever you want to look at.
Absolutely. Back on the team tracker or the draft aid, another feature that we have is the in-season PECOTA's update. So when you're looking at that, you could quickly see, like if your third baseman gets hurt, you could quickly see, well, there's a hole. And then you can go over to the draft aid and see, well, here are the highest available SSSim players available for the upcoming draft. And in a cooperative effort with Scoresheet, the draft aid actually reads your league off of the Scoresheet site and displays only the players who are available. So you can find quickly which third basemen are going to be the best. And it's broken out by, you can get the best hitters versus lefties based on true average versus lefties or versus righties, and just all sorts of ways to break the stats out. And you noted that it's 10. I mean, 10's the default, so it shows up on a screen, but you can quickly, use a pull-down menu and make that 100, and there's a button to export it to a CSV or to Excel for people who like working in their own spreadsheets. So, I mean, we don't restrict people to cycling through a table 10 at a time.
Yeah, no, you guys, I said 10 just because I kind of have that limited mind capacity where glancing at 10 is a little easier. But yeah, I think that, I mean, your site has always been great for baseball and fantasy also. I've been talking to people from Baseball Prospectus since you guys started. I've known Gary Huckabee, who started it for forever now. But I think this Scoresheet Pacific stuff that you've started this year is really going to come in handy for people that, you know, want to at least check their own research and make sure they're not about to draft someone that you guys think is a real mistake, or better yet, maybe they won't overlook someone that you guys are touting as clearly one of the next best players left in their league.
Yeah, definitely, Jeff. I admit to some sort of guilt on this of wanting to get this product out the door myself because I wanted to use it, and you know, I could be pretty competitive about my Scoresheet teams. Since I've rolled it out, I've had 2 expert players that, you know, I communicate with on email sometime that give me, you know, good Scoresheet specific feedback, comment that they hate the product. They hate the product because it brings their, you know, other league members up to a par with them, and, you know, that they lose a lot of their competitive advantage. And that, frankly, it's music to my ears. So
yeah, that's kind of a nice compliment. I remember when people used to say that. Ron Shanley, when he started Baseball HQ, one of his complaints used to be that no one would help him publicize his site because they wanted to be the only one in their league that knew about it. I just think it makes it more fun for everybody if everyone in the league has some basic knowledge. And then, of course, like any projection system, you're going to tweak it to your own personal biases.
You know, that's a good point. I mean, that's really at the core of it. If the projections don't hold up, then, you know, all the various metrics in the world won't, you know, make them useful. But Pacoda has held up over the years, and we're constantly running metrics against it to make sure that, you know, the current system works against past data so that we can have confidence that it's projecting future data as well as possible.
Right. And then, you know, I can take my own personal biases, and because I'm stubborn, I'm gonna draft Homer Bailey kind of no matter what you guys say about him. It's just if you say he's going to have another one of his floppy years, at least then I know no one else in my leagues is going to take him high, and I can wait a little longer before I waste yet another year's draft pick on him.
Yeah, that's a good point. And sometimes that's, you know, when having your league mates know about a data source is a good thing. But, you know, hopefully this is the secret source that people want to look at instead of the ones they want their league mates to have in their hands.
Pacoda, as you said, Pacoda and Baseball Prospectus in general, Pacoda is the projection system, if we hadn't mentioned that yet. I mean, that has been around for years, so it's certainly one that has great respect from everybody that uses these things. And so you guys are a subscription service, so you have some free things on your site, but if you want to use tools like this, you have to be a subscriber. Though you guys have a cheap, relatively inexpensive fantasy offering, don't you?
Right, Jeff. For the fantasy season, it started up actually February 1st and goes through the end of the baseball season. You get a product for, it's about half the price, $19.95. So, and you get access to the fantasy related articles that get published, including the Scoresheet articles and this draft aid and the team tracker and the player forecast manager, which I hadn't really mentioned, but I mean, player forecast manager is a great way to get a look at the entire population of your league because it doesn't do draft specific. You know, it shows you top to bottom, and, you know, for what it's worth, it slaps a dollar value on players based on Scoresheet simulation values. So I pull it up now. I see that Albert Pujols, using just SS Sim, is worth $52 this year in a Scoresheet context, which allows me, if I want to trade him for somebody, you know, I could see that Felix Hernandez is worth $32, and I know that I probably want to get $20 in value more of players if I, you know, get Felix Hernandez and something for Albert Pujols in a trade.
Yeah, well, dollar values are a great way to compare players. They're really simple, very easy to understand. The problem with most of them is they're rotisserie based. So your guys' dollar values, where Juan Pierre isn't worth $30 just because he might steal 40 bases somehow if he gets on 40 times. Yeah, I think having dollar values is a really handy way to evaluate, as you said, trades. And like you said, $19.95, that's not just for the Scoresheet stuff, that's for the entire BP, pretty much fantasy menu of offerings.
Exactly. You get all the fantasy articles, and there's, you know, I mean, a dozen a week or at least, and they evaluate players. I mean, sometimes you will get the fantasy slant, and, you know, I write for that sometimes, and I'll find myself feeling dirty sometimes rating a Juan Pierre highly because, well, he steals a bunch of bases, but he can't hit his way out of a paper bag. But that's how it goes. I mean, you play Scoresheet, you filter that stuff out, but it's still, the rest of it provides good important information sometimes, like how a player fits into his team's construct, whether he'll be batting leadoff 700 times or whether he'll be batting ninth 400 times, and that sort of question that does impact your Scoresheet team.
Right. Well, there are lots of things that are kind of important no matter what type of fantasy game you play, rotisserie, Scoresheet, whatever. Who's going to win the third base job, say? Are they really going to put Miguel Cabrera at third base, and is he going to break his leg in the second week of the season trying to play third base? Which is my fear because I have him.
Exactly.
But, yeah, and, I don't want to sound like a shiller for BP, but actually there's a lot of places that sell an in-season team tracker all by itself for about $20. So, I used that last year. It's just, you can look at box scores and all that, but it's kind of nice. You come to work, you turn on your computer, you fire up the team tracker and see what every one of your players did yesterday at a glance, because you guys will automatically load in a player's team if you just tell them what Scoresheet league and team number they are. Right,
exactly. You just put in the Scoresheet URL and it brings the team right in. And that's an interesting concern. We thought about Miguel Cabrera. You bring him up as an example. That's a place where having the Scoresheet draft aid could actually help you, because we figure out like the number of projected runs his errors are going to cost you at third base, for example. So I mean, you go to the draft aid and you can see error runs right there, and you see that, well, Miguel Cabrera is going to cost you so many runs. It's really not as many as you might expect, because his lack of range will prevent him from making a ton of errors. But you could see the combined range and error runs right on the draft date and see that he's going to cost you some number of runs over the course of a season based on the PECOTA projections combined with the Scoresheet range ratings. And that's something that, this is really an innovation this year. So, I mean, we have the team tracker, you pull it up. I do the same thing as you. I start out with that every day, but then, for the drafts that are coming up for Scoresheet, this is really the product that can help people through those.
Oh, I agree. I think that I know I'll be using it because I'm in one local league where I haven't even made the playoffs in about 9 years. So part of my problem is this is my busiest time of the year. I don't get to do much prep. So having a draft tool, that's really going to help me out, because obviously you can kind of cheat and just do it quickly. Yeah, I think it's great. Well, plus, we haven't really talked about it, but actually forever my favorite thing about Baseball Prospectus was just the authors. The stable of guys that you have on that website. It's a very entertaining kind of, if you got an hour to waste, you can always spend an hour reading columns.
I totally agree with that. That was my first exposure to Baseball Prospectus also. And turning it back to a Scoresheet functionality, I mean, I don't know where I would be ranking prospects without Kevin Goldstein's columns. So, I mean, you don't get that with the fantasy package, but, that's a huge reason to consider upgrading and, being a premium subscriber on the site, where, I mean, he offers insights that you just won't get anywhere else. And they don't always agree. I mean, sometimes you get the sense that all the people are saying the same thing about the same prospects, but that's not really true.
Yeah, I mean, the Bryce Harpers and the Mike Trouts, everybody kind of agrees on. But when you're trying to project a 19 or 20-year-old who's in single-A baseball, it's kind of nice to read 3 experts, and then you actually have to read it. You can't just go to their grade. You have to read why. John Sickles might say this guy is going to be the next great first baseman, whereas Kevin might say, he's got a hole in his swing, and unless he corrects it, he's never going to get past Double-A ball.
Exactly. I mean, some guy might be a 5-star prospect, and he's a sure thing to be in the majors and be a good major league player. Another guy might be 5 stars. He's still in rookie ball, but his upside is off the charts, so has a lower chance of making it, but his upside is extreme.
Yeah, no, I think ranking prospects is an incredibly difficult thing to do. Well, hey, it's been great talking to you today, and I'd recommend to anyone that they, if they're thinking about maybe subscribing to BP, I think these new Scoresheet specific features would be enough to make it well worth your while, except for the folks in my league. I don't think any of them should ever subscribe to BP. Great talking to you, Rob.
Thanks, Jeff. Good to check in, and people who do subscribe to it are always welcome to offer up comments. We're very responsive to suggestions.
Okay, thanks.
Take care.